Hey guys, welcome. This is Brad Krantz. Thanks so much for joining me today on my Monday morning leadership. What is leadership? That's a topic that I'm going to tackle today. I'm going to kind of do a surface level view on it, but really it can be the action of leading a group of people or an organization, as in different styles of leadership, or the state or position of being a leader, as in the leadership of a party. So, what is leadership? Anyway, it's such a simple question, and yet from my experience and observation, it continues to confuse both companies and lay people alike. And of course, there's been thousands of books written on the subject. Again, I'm just going to kind of do a surface level view here, share some of my observations. So, one, leadership has nothing to do with seniority or with one's position in the hierarchy of a company, organization, or team. Leadership doesn't automatically happen when you reach a certain pay grade or position, right? Typically, that's management. And I'd strongly assert from the true leadership doesn't really begin until you get at least to level two, the permission level on the 5 levels of leadership as outlined by John Maxwell. The first one being positional. So you're in a position, and I'm going to call it manager typically. You could be an executive, whatever, boss. But that true leadership doesn't really start until people follow you because they give you the permission to lead them. Okay, food for thought there. It's my take on it. When you ask, and in this case, if you ask your employees, your team, or your organization to do a task, they will do their best. They may try to help you because they feel appreciated, included in the decisions, they're cared for, they're trusted, and they're valued. Number two, leadership has nothing to do with titles, right? In fact, you can be a leader in your place of worship, your neighborhood, in your family, all without having a title. I'll give you a quick example of this, a book I read last year, which details the topic by Clay Scroggins, How to Lead When You're Not in Charge. So you don't have to be in charge to be a leader, guys. That's great news. And that's awesome. If as John Maxwell says, in fact, if you wouldn't follow yourself, why should anyone else? Okay, so when you think about that, leadership is more disposition than position. You influence others from wherever you are. And again, the book, How to Lead When You're Not in Charge. Okay, you don't need to be, an extroverted, charismatic to practice leadership. In fact, even those with charisma don't automatically lead. You're not just a leader because you have charisma. We just need to exercise our influence. We need to do that positively. Keep in mind that those, again, with charisma aren't automatically leaders. Thirdly, leadership isn't management. And I call this is a big one for me because in my experience from when I started out young, in my teens in the grocery industry till, a couple of years ago when I left my last job, I have seen so many issues with confusing this. I'm not going to talk about the difference between leadership and management, but companies confuse this one all the time, and people who are in management confuse this far too often. Yes, good management's needed. Managers need to plan, measure, monitor, solve, hire, fire, and so many other things, but typically managers manage things. They're level one leaders, quote unquote. But leaders lead people. Leaders create more leaders. Leadership is about responsibility. Real leaders lead by example, not position. And then fourth, kind of so again, what is leadership? Peter Drucker says the only definition of a leader is someone who has followers. Warren Bennis says that leadership is the capacity to translate vision into reality. That's a good one. My favorite from John Maxwell, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And then more recently, Simon Sinek, leadership is about making others feel safe. Anyone in an organization can be a leader. I think I've already made the case for that. It's choosing to look out for the person on your left and to look out for the person on your right. So let's circle back. And what is leadership? Well, I'll give a good definition again. Simon Sinek says we call them leaders because they go first. They take the risk before anybody else does because they choose to sacrifice so that their people will be safe and protected. The natural response is that our people will sacrifice for us. And then John Maxwell says why you lead and the way you lead are important. They define you, your leadership, and ultimately your contribution. And leadership, again, is about responsibility. I talked about this last week in my video, which I'll link at the end here, the responsibility of leadership. Leaders have many responsibilities. And again, that's a different topic. I covered it briefly in my other video. And then I think finally, we can say that leadership is the facilitation of a process of tapping into unlimited human potential and turning it into desired results, right? Isn't that what we're all after? So what do you think? What would you add to this list? And how would you answer the question of what leadership is? Yes, thanks so much for joining me today. Hey, I'd love to get your comments on this, feedback, your thoughts on the video. Again, answering some of those questions. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much again, and have an awesome Monday, guys.